What's up, everybody? Episode 26 today. We are at a half year. Woo!
Ooh,
Crazy little journey we've been on. And today it's all about the Midwest, baby. We're big Midwest energy today. It is another Hyatt property, but it's in the Unbound collection. It's called Hotel Kansas City, smack dab in the middle of Kansas City, Missouri, not Kansas. Gets a little tricky there. Uh, that's where I went 2 weeks ago. I've been on a little tour day Midwest, if you will. I was in Cincinnati this weekend for the Flying Pig Marathon. I rocked some of my merch. I ran the 10K. I finished 310th place, if I remember correctly, out of 5,200. It's a little slower.
respectable.
It was a respectable, a little slower than I wanted to be, but I did get a PR in that, man. Running through Kentucky, going over the Ohio River a bunch of times. Exciting stuff. I did stay at the Hyatt Regency in Cincinnati, and it's not worth your time or really worth talking about. So that's our episode on the Hyatt Regency Cincinnati. It is not a Prive hotel, and there is probably a reason. It's
Reason for that?
yeah, not the best. I don't. Anyway, if you have a good Cincinnati hotel, let me know if I ever wind up back there. I'll check that out instead. But it was nice. It was about zero point 0.2 miles from the start of the Flying Pig Marathon. So if you happen to be a marathon runner and listen to this podcast about Kansas City and be running the marathon, it is a great hotel for the marathon weekend. I don't even think it's sold out, to be honest. And it is 300 under. It was under $300 a night for the whole weekend. Every time I looked. So you can't beat being close to the start finish line of a race, let me tell you, because the last thing you want to do after a marathon is walk.
Yeah, I would agree.
Anyway, that is our 1 minute mini episode on Cincinnati. Let's get into Hotel Kansas City, Jamie. It is a very unique hotel. It's interesting. There's a lot of historic hotels in Kansas City that I found. Hilton is also one. The Hilton has some dark history, I will say, whereas this hotel has a lot more interesting history. The best way to describe this without really just reading you all this boring info from like the hotel history registry is this hotel was built as a social club in 1882, is proclaimed as the Midwest's premier social club. And I quote, for the purpose of cultivating social and business associations among leading business professionals of Kansas City.
Okay.
Sounds kind of interesting. Not really relevant to today, but this building, it says, was the heart of Kansas City's business district for 80 years. At one point, there was a swimming pool on the 13th floor. There still is a 13th floor, so that is interesting. They had, at the time, handball courts, gyms, bowling alleys, restaurants. It also did have some private hotel rooms as part of this club, but I think only members could stay there. Some notable members that were part of this club are President Harry Truman and President Dwight Eisenhower. So that's pretty interesting. And then a
Very
bunch
cool.
of people I'd never heard of, so we don't need to talk about them. In 2002, the Kansas City Club, the social club, relocated, and it says the building was transitioned into an event space on the first 6 floors and rooftop, and there were condos in between. That didn't go well, from what it sounds like. The building was sold, and then it did a 1.5 year renovation starting in May 2019, which then in October 2020, it opened as the Hotel Kansas City that we're going to talk about today. This building is added to the National Registry of Historic Places. So I think that limits what they can do right with the outside of the building and some of those things.
Before we get into it, so
Okay.
I've never been to I've never been to Kansas City. What are we going to Kansas City for? What were you there for? What would I go there for?
Man, that's a loaded question. If you want to see the Kansas City Chiefs play, I don't know. I was there. Some friends of mine who are listeners to the podcast, so hello, Drew and Allison. They are going to every baseball stadium in America, which, respectable endeavor. And Kansas City is their second to last stadium. So we joined that, and they had, I think there was 15 or 16 of us total. Maybe that's a little high, maybe 12 of us. We all stayed at the hotel. So I got to look at a lot of different rooms and such. The downside is those stadiums are outside of town. the Chiefs play where the Royals play, which is, I forget the name of this city now that they're exactly in. I want to say it's Overland Park, but that might not be correct. It's 20-minute drive. You really need a car to get around, although they have a free tram service, or it's not like a
Okay.
over train. It looks like if you've ever been to Amsterdam, it looks like the exact same trains that run through
Okay.
Amsterdam, and it's free in Kansas City, which is kind of cool. You could walk about 2 blocks from Hotel Kansas City and hop on this free train. We did that a couple times. To get to some places, why else would you need to go there? I don't know. I'm trying to take my daughter to all 50 states. So this crossed off 2
Okay.
states, Kansas and Missouri. So that was helpful for me. Kansas City does have the first ever purpose built women's soccer stadium, and it's very close to downtown, which I'm kind of bummed they were not playing there. If you're familiar, it's the NWSL. I think they're currently in first place as of recording, but the season's, I think, only been 7 games or so. So that might be incorrect by the time we get to there. But it looks like a really cool stadium. It's very close to downtown. And then interestingly as well, the U.S. women's rugby team just played there and broke a U.S. attendance record for women's rugby.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
They had over 10,000 people there in attendance. So I think that would have been fun as well. So sporting ideas for you. I'm kind of bummed because the rugby game was last weekend when I was in Cincinnati and it was in Kansas City. So my weeks just kind of didn't line up the best. But I will say Kansas City just as a whole, it was more fun than I thought. Some of the food was better than I thought. It's cheap if you're coming from one of the big major cities in America. It's almost like it's like Austin, Texas, maybe 30, 40 years ago. I don't know if it'll ever become Austin, Texas, but it certainly has like a quieter, hipstery vibe. It seems like young people are kind of thriving and finding a home in there, like artists and creative types, because it's affordable. So do with all that you will. But let's move on to this Hotel Kansas City. Now that you've asked your questions here, Hotel Kansas City, you can get $100 property credit, a room upgrade, breakfast for 2, welcome amenity, early check-in based on availability, and they have some good connecting rooms. One thing that is exciting about this hotel, I did mention it was opened in 2020. They've done a really good job restoring the lobby of the hotel, a lot of the old features of the hotel. Some of the ballrooms look really cool. I've got some clips of that as well. There's like a full 2-story stained glass ballroom between the 3rd and 4th floor, or 4th and 5th floor, that I was like, man, this would be cool to throw like a party or have a wedding. But the contrast is the rooms are brand new, right? The rooms have nice fixtures, new paint, flat screen TVs. And so I did like that you don't really feel like you're compromising, because a lot of times you stay in these old hotels and they feel really old. They smell old. The bathrooms are oversized, which is obviously not something you'd expect from a building in the 1800s. So the room layouts, and we were in a standard suite, which there's quite a few suite options. I was in the 1-bedroom suite with 1 king. And then they even have these cool 1 king bed and 2 queen bed loft suites, where it's like a downstairs living room and you walk up a stairwell to the just kind of like bed on a top floor towards the top of the building. Similar to like the Hyatt Centric in Venice or in Murano.
Yep.
Venice, yeah, if you've ever seen those or stayed in those. So I did like that a lot. And so that is fun. You've got this, when you're out in the hallways and you're in the main areas, there's a lot of vintage things. Like they have the US mail chutes where like there's on the bottom lobby floor, it's like this huge box where all the letters go. And then at each floor, there's a little slat so you can drop your mail in, which I did find out on, I want to say it was TikTok a week or 2 later. Someone was doing it's like some guy who bought like a skyscraper, and he's like, I don't the one of the beginning of the videos I saw was trying to justify to my wife why I bought the skyscraper. I was like, well, it's some good clickbait. But I was scrolling through some of his videos, and his building has one of these mail chutes too, and I guess they're illegal now per fire code. So you'll never see a new one in a building, but they're allowed to stay in buildings that were built in period. So you may never see one, but there's a really pretty like letterbox by the lobby elevators right there, and it kind of follows the elevators as you go up and down the floors. So there's a lot of cool things like that. And then there's a presidential ballroom, and it has a bunch of stuff about Dwight Eisenhower, like from him staying there. And I think they threw some party for him and stuff. So there's like it's a presidential ballroom, and then they've got a little display case with a lot of his stuff that was there. So It's pretty interesting. It's like a nice modern-y hotel with some cool history and features to go.
I will say, you saying that the bathrooms are large, that really stood out because a lot of times older buildings, even if you do a nice renovation, like that is you're still getting like these old bathrooms, these tiny bathtubs, so that's a really nice one to hear.
Yeah, and I mean, even if you want to talk about it, the base room is 330 square feet. And it says in the guide they'll upgrade you on availability to a one king corner from the base room, and that's already bumped up to 420 square feet. So not what you're really expecting, right, from a vintage hotel. It seems like they really, I guess when they started building these as condos and then turned into a hotel, it does seem like they had really gutted the place first, trying to use all the old walls and
Yep.
such. The loft suite's not that big. It's a little over 800 square feet, so it's not huge. But for some reason, when you move the bed up top and you've got like, I don't know, 600 square feet of living area, on the bottom, it feels nice. We kind of had a little get together and hung out there. There's like a full size sectional couch. There was a little table, and there was, weirdly, I want to say there was 1.5 bath in that, but I might be misremembering that off of my brain. You've got some big windows in those loft suites as well. I think a cool thing about this property, Jamie, when you're digging into it, is just the pricing. It's a pretty affordable hotel, and there's one Marriott. I want to say it's Hotel Randolph, which is probably the only other like really competitively nice hotel in like Kansas City proper. Base rooms, I just picked a random week in June. You could pull some other dates if you wanted to. I imagine once you start getting into the winter, no one wants to be in Kansas City, so the rooms probably get even cheaper. But I picked a random week in June, and you're $195 for a base room.
And you're getting $100 credit.
Yeah, you're getting $100 credit. You're getting breakfast for two. Realistically, they're saying that the upgrade path is to the one king bed corner for Prive bookings, which is 267. So it's a $70 savings, and you're getting 100 square feet. So that's a nice bump. Honestly, even if you want a suite here, the one bedroom suite with one king bed suite that I was in, $290. I mean, that's
For a suite. Yeah, that's
yeah, it's nothing for a suite. And then if you want to get into these loft suites, the price kind of doubles there. You're at 527 for a king one, and a two queen bed loft suite is 570, which that's also kind of cool to see two queen beds in like a premium suite situation, because
you don't see that often.
you don't see that often. Yes. So that is rare. And I would even argue you could probably get away with a situation where if you had maybe, I was trying to see what the max occupancy on this queen bed loft suite is, but I would assume with two queens, it's at least going to be four. And so like my thought would be too, is like if you had parents in one queen bed and like an older kid in the other queen bed, and if you had like a younger kid, get a rollaway or stick them on the couch down there, or vice versa.
Yep.
Put the older kid down on the couch and keep your younger kid upstairs with you. So it does give you some versatility there, which I do appreciate. Now let's talk about a few of the problems I had on my stay. Uh, you know, Here nor there. I'm going to say this before we get into anything. I think the staff there was all really fantastic. The staff was really helpful. It's a really old building, right? So things are not going to maybe work the best. And I think they did the best they could with the situation we had. So we had Prive breakfast. Almost everyone, everyone did that was with our group, as far as I remember, helping book some people out. The restaurant where we have breakfast was closed. The reason it was closed is because it had no hot water. Yes, which also then meant the espresso machine just did not work the whole time we were there in the lobby. So I will say they pivoted, and there's like a bar in the lobby, nice bar. And so they kind of converted that, and they have like a market, like a typical marketplace with like coffee and pastries. So they kind of functioned and ran the restaurant breakfast out of there, and you ordered and they made the food, I'm guessing, at one of the other restaurants and brought it out to you there. Now, I will say the hotel was at capacity. There was no rooms available at all. There was a UFC going on in town when we were there, and they had a really big wedding at the hotel as well. So they were like to the gills. I only saw two or three other people eat breakfast when we were eating breakfast down there. So there might have just not been a lot of people with breakfast included, or some people just went elsewhere. So it wasn't overwhelming. The quality of food was great. My wife got avocado toast, and I think they literally put like the equivalent of like 4 avocados of avocado toast. They were very generous. I got the breakfast sandwich. I think my daughter did French toast and pancakes. Some of our friends ordered some other things. It all looked pretty good. However, I can't imagine running a restaurant without hot water for 2 days. You know, it was like when they said that when we checked in, I was like, well, surely this will be fixed in a couple hours. It was still broken when we left. So, you know, I can't really give any feedback on the actual restaurant that you do Prive breakfast in because I didn't go to it because it was closed.
That's
But
fair.
the grab and go was pretty nice. It was a bummer the espresso machine didn't work. They had pre-made some coffee that was not great, but I would hope with the espresso machine it would taste better. I ended up ordering, I think, cold brews or iced coffee, and they were pouring it out of a can, which I don't know if that's their standard practice either. It was actually okay tasting. It was better than their hot coffee. But like I said, I think they were just dealing with a lot of challenges without having hot water in a restaurant. And the restaurant was like closed. They weren't doing dinner there or anything as well. So I think they were really taking it in the shorts for whatever thing. But, you know, once again, it's a building from the Civil War, basically, right? So, you know, who knows what's going on in those poor old pipes in there. Kind of just a funny note. So there's a place in the cellar. It's like, so when you're on the lobby floor, there's like it almost kind of looks like a speakeasy, but it's not because it's got like a door and a sign, but there's this place called Nighthawk. And you kind of go downstairs into like a basement cellar, and it's like a really dark, it's like a big middle bar and like a side bar, and then they do like live music and such. I would like to tell you about the name of a band that was playing while we were there.
Wait.
The band that was playing on Saturday night in this basement was called Ass Jams, ASSJAMZ, which
Okay.
you can find them on Instagram or Facebook if you don't believe me, or SoundCloud. They're out there. But I was like, they had a big like advertisement for them playing in the elevator. So I cracked up every, you know, I don't know, maybe I'm 5 years old. Every time I walked in the elevator,
That's
it's
all
like
right.
the Saturday night ass jams. I just got a little kick out of that. I
I
did
like
not
it.
attend to hear how good they were, but I'm sure they did a fantastic job. Where I think maybe this hotel is uniquely qualified to play a role too is I think if you're in Kansas City, restaurant issue be damned. I think it was still a really good value. It's a great location. One thing I think to think about too, and I'll try and get some clips together, or you can click around, or I can even send you some of the stuff I have if you want to message us. But like I said, some of the ballrooms are just gorgeous, like big chandeliers, double stained glass windows with all these wood balconies. I'll even shoot you this, Jamie, so you can like look at this one ballroom like in real time in case you're not finding this one. But the hotel was really beautiful. I did a whole walk around. I will see the gym is probably one place where I thought they were like a little bit weak, but they kind of had everything you needed. It's kind of crammed into the second floor in this corner, but you had free weights, treadmills, everything you were looking for in a property. And like we mentioned, it's 144 hotel room. It's not huge. It got the job done.
Yeah, that room's cool with all the stained glass and everything. That's really neat looking.
Yeah. And then, like you've got all these like
Yeah, that's cool.
intricate, yeah, carved balconies. It's just not something you would ever see in a modern building, right? I think it'd be really fun for like a wedding or like a big party with the chandeliers. There's also another event space on the roof, which I didn't actually figure out how to get access to or peek into. Looking at some pictures of that, it was pretty nice as well. Valet was a little slow if I want to nitpick a little bit, but like I said, once again, it was a full bore, you know, experience. Valet parking was $42 a day, which I found a slightly offensive in Kansas City, considering the price of everything else. You gotta live and let go, I think, at some point in your life.
How was I was gonna say, how was the location wise? Like, was there stuff that you could walk to from there? I'm not familiar with Kansas City at all.
Yeah, it does seem to be kind of in the heart of things. I never like so the three things we did like in the city were all relatively close. There's an area, the Hotel Kansas City is right on the border of this area called the Power and Lights District. And that seems to be like one of the more hip areas, for lack of a better description. The place I really liked, so we walked over and we took the light rail that I was saying is free, which you'll see the light rail kind of runs up and down Main Street. So if you're looking from Hotel Kansas City, there's a station on like the opposite end of both corners from there. So it's like a 2-block walk. And then we I really enjoyed this area. It's called City Market, and there is a restaurant we went to called Pigwitch, which, on our pig theme today. Pigwitch is like a pork-based sandwich shop. Oh my gosh. Probably the best thing I had eaten in a long time. It was like a sandwich with like, I don't even remember everything now. There's like fried pork with bacon and then like some pulled pork on it with cheese and like
Ooh,
pickles. It was delicious. I mean, probably like 6,000 million, 100,000 calories. There was some other fun options in there. And then the whole city market area itself it's some kind of like, I don't know. It's like an outdoor, it's not quite like hawker stalls, but there's like some covered areas in the city market with like people were selling flowers and all the typical like farmers market type stuff. And then it's surrounded by a building that has all these real restaurants in it, like Pigwitch. We had some friends go back and eat at a place called Burrito Bros. I did not partake. And there's another really good rated place that I looked called Brown and Low that was in there. There's even a steamboat museum that's part of this whole place, which looked very boring.
that's kind of
And
cool. Oh, I
yeah,
was thinking,
yeah, how about this? It wasn't interesting enough for me to go to it. And
fair enough.
then we from there, yeah, another thing we found. And then after Pigwitch, we walked over. You kind of leave the farmers market area, and there was this place called Betty Ray's Ice Cream, which they have two locations in Kansas City. Some of the best ice cream I think I've ever had. It was up there. It was fantastic. They had some really fun flavors. It was priced really nice because sometimes ice cream gets a little crazy. So we ate ice cream. However, it was really cold this whole weekend we were there. And then right next to the ice cream place, we went to a donut shop called
Phew.
Donutology, which is in an old train car. Check this out though. They had at this donut uh, train trolley, you could sit inside. They still had the old train seats and stuff, and then half of it was like the donut shop where they made coffee. I got some coffee, probably the best coffee I had in Kansas City, although I didn't really go on a coffee hunt, but it was the most respectable cup of coffee I had while I was there. Most people I was with, however, were getting $3 local beers, and it wasn't even like a Bud Light. It was some fancy local beer for $3. When was the last time you got a big
Yeah, that's
beer for
crazy.
$3? The donuts were really good there as well. My daughter really appreciated them, and that all area is probably, I don't know, a mile away from the hotel up north. But like I said, you can hop on this local train, which makes it really easy to get all there. All that stuff's like it seems like there's a lot more stuff in that whole area. The night before, we went to this place called Parlor, which I think is still in the Power and Light District. It's like a huge like 3-story building, and there's like 9 restaurants in it, and it's like open seating. I'm sure you've seen it, like one of those like modern food court style places. The Slider restaurant in there, I don't remember the exact name of it. I think it's Slideshow, was pretty decent in there as well. And then we kind of did some other food as we had ventured off. We started to get a little further out into town. Oh, Broadway. Oh, I lied. I said Donutology was my best coffee, but I forgot. I actually found my way to one coffee shop that I really appreciated. The people that worked, I knew the coffee was going to be good the moment I walked in. If you don't understand, you don't understand. But I looked at these employees at this coffee shop and I was like, oh, this coffee's going to be great. And their carrot cake also looked really good, but I had already been to donuts and ice cream. But it's called Broadway Coffee. It's kind of on the other side of town in this area called Westport. Best coffee in Kansas City, I think you could find.
Okay.
I had breakfast right next to that place at a place called Char Bar, which is a barbecue restaurant, but they do brunch. I had a burnt ends Benedict on my last morning there. It was like 11 o'clock in the morning, but I also really liked that place. And then I had just some of the plain burnt ends as well. Pretty fantastic. So that was my tour day, Kansas City. I went to the Kansas City baseball stadium. Yeah. Okay. That was part of the trip as well.
All I'm hearing is be ready to eat a lot.
Yes.
That
That is.
sounded like a lot of good food.
Yes, like I said, I was pleasantly surprised. The prices were good. I will say one of our friends, Jackie, kind of put together a lot of the food and planning here. So that
She does
did,
good food.
yeah, it definitely helped a lot, but I really enjoyed everything there. And then even if you're not adventuring out around Kansas City as much as you would like to be, assuming all the restaurants at Hotel Kansas City are functioning and operating, the food is all run by James Beard nominated executive chef Johnny Leach, and the pastry chef is Ellen Jo Leach. So I'm going to assume they are a married couple, but I might be making an assumption that is incorrect. But they've got the Town Company, which is one of the restaurants. There's a supper club tasting room, and then you've got the Novelle restaurant, which is, I'm fairly certain, where we were supposed to be eating, that was closed. And then there's also the Antler Room, which I did not attend in my small time there. Listen, I think it checks out. It was a great setup. I was pretty happy in general. And it was one of those hotels that I just kind of booked on a whim. And I was like, oh, this looks really neat. I told everyone else about it. We all booked it. I think pleasantly surprised. I think the happiest surprise for me, and what would have probably stopped me from recommending it to some people, is that like I said, the bathrooms and everything was like very modern, and the rooms were very nice and didn't smell like mildew and look like they were from the 1400s. As someone who likes staying in older hotels when I can, just because they're sometimes unique, I've definitely been like, oh, this place smells as old as it looks. I don't know how to define old smell.
Yeah, I get it.
You know it when you smell it. You're like, oh, this place has seen some things in these walls. I don't know, anything you feel like we didn't really cover? Any questions you got about good old Kansas City?
No, I feel like we hit the dining, hit the rooms, some unique features. I feel like that was, I've not been to Kansas City. I'd go, just for the donuts and the barbecue and the pork sandwich, I think I'm in.
Definitely. Here's another cool thing when I'm looking at some notes as well. That 2-bedroom loft suite the loft suites they talk about, you can also add a connecting room. It says in their, connecting room requests. So all of a sudden now you've got a loft plus a huge living room plus an extra room. And I think with those prices I was talking about, you're only at $700. So you got
it's not bad
two
for
queens and a
big
loft
family
and
or
an extra king. So that is kind of cool. And then you said you saw a note somewhere too that on the 13th floor, which it actually does have a 13th floor, there was like the original tile from the old hotel pool that you could see.
Yeah, I think it said in some of the, where did I see this? It just said so some suites are located on the 13th floor where remnants of the original swimming pool tile can be seen. So if you're staying on the 13th floor and happen to be in a suite, keep an eye out for some cool pool tiles.
That's kind of neat just to be in your, in your room as well. And there's a lot of like stained glass, like old walnut and stuff that's been pretty restored, but all mixed with like a modern restaurant and rooms. We're always talking about really fun places, Hong Kong, St. Kitts, and I just was like, yeah, let's throw some Kansas City in there, get a little exciting, but you never know.
So I'm going to throw something out there.
Okay.
Speaking of Hong Kong, talking Hong Kong.
Okay.
I'm going to shout out another one of our friends, Chris. So if you ever fly, this is new to me, if you ever fly Cathay Pacific first class, I actually put this shirt on just for this reason.
Ooh.
On the pajamas, there's some like designer name brand. I don't know what they were, but there's a tag on there. And if you bring it to the store, whatever the name of the store is, in the mall, and I think there's multiple locations in Hong Kong, they'll give you a free gift. So you can get like a fancy silk handkerchief or a number of different things. But these t-shirts were one of them. So this t-shirt was like a $50 t-shirt. Not that I'm buying, well, a lot of $50 t-shirts, but this $50 t-shirt, they give it to you for free for buying a $20,000 flight, or if you use points. Obviously, that's the way to do it. But if you fly Cathay Pacific first class, on the pajamas or on the bag the pajamas come in, there's a tag, get your free gift in Hong Kong.
Wow. Man, the amount of free tips we give on this podcast really should be a paid subscription, I feel. Perfect. Well, if you would like to book Hotel Kansas City or any other Prive hotel, which in fact we have a really great Prive episode, I will make sure is linked in the show notes. So if you want to learn more about how to get extra benefits at Hyatt hotels in general, we have a full episode on Prive, but I covered it pretty well for this Hotel Kansas City. It's pretty most in line with most properties. $100 property credit, breakfast for two, welcome amenity, early check-in based on availability, room upgrade based on availability. But yes, so we have a link down below as well for travelbros.com/book with us, travelbrospod.com/book with us. And if you fill out that form, it helps us get back to you a lot faster. And we would love to help you book at this hotel in Hotel Kansas City if you find your way into Kansas City, Missouri, not Kansas. And any other properties, we're at a half year. It's pretty crazy. We'll be at a year.
It's pretty crazy.
Before we know it, out of nowhere, we've been booking. I think we've quoted more people in the Cayman Islands like in the last week or two than forever. So that's been exciting. We've got some people at the Kimpton. I think we're looking at sending some people over to the Ritz as well. And we're just having fun. Just booking hotels. Please reach out to us as the two semi-best looking travel agents in the business.
Definitely best looking travel
And,
agents in the business.
Definitely, yeah. Confirmed. Travel and Leisure said it was the case. Interesting. Well, everyone have a good week, and it is our best episode ever. Episode 26, Hotel Kansas City. We will catch you guys later.
See you next week. Yeah.